And? To screw it up less next time, although we can't possibly screw it up as badly as the city is screwing this up.
Screw it up less. Screw it up less.
And you can't make me laugh off the top. And welcome to This Week in Worcester podcast. I am Tom Marino, editor of This Week in Worcester, and I have some obnoxious lines behind me today. And that is because I am incompetent with a green screen. And I'm here with he is a contributor to This Week in Worcester. He is the president of Hollywood Film Group. He is the executive producer at Manager Media. He is Mr. John Edward Keogh.
That's me. I'm John.
You are. And I have a spider web behind me, and hopefully the spider will come and take my life, because that's how I feel about my green screen right now.
It's gonna be okay, dude. It's gonna be okay.
I just need to rehang my stuff, but I'm lazy. So how has your week been? How was your week, sir?
It was pretty good. It was really busy. A lot of stuff. We started production on the fire documentary. So I mean that is it is it's a lot of work to make a movie. And so we were busy. We were exhausted. Last night we were at the fire station until like 2:00 in the morning or something. And but we got the stuff we need to make the first part of the movie. So that's cool. That's pretty exciting.
That is cool. That is very exciting.
So there's that. I did a show with Manny yesterday. Did the Shawnee Film Festival this week. Did what else? What else did we do? We did but yeah, we did the Shawnee Film Festival. Just did a ton of stuff. It's just that's how. Oh, and then we went to City Council. The great and powerful Freddie Nathan came out for trivia this week. He demanded that you come to trivia. So there was definitely that. And then Maria,
not even requested, it was a demand.
It was a demand. Freddie Nathan basically he called you out. Basically, he's like, "Where are you?"
I mean, listen, he's making demands like a protester. We'll get him to the left soon enough.
I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know. The left.
I really said to irritate him because I know he doesn't like that.
Yeah.
He doesn't like that idea.
Yeah, I don't know that there's left or right or what. Yeah. See, Maria wants to go to trivia. We just did a ton of stuff. It was really busy, excitingly busy time. So it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And so hopefully as that it goes, that will we'll continue to build. But the fire documentary in particular is really exciting. And I'm super excited to show it to people. We started showing, we did little clips and stuff. What happened there? Well, sorry about that. I was repeating myself.
Weird.
The things that we're learning about the fire department in general, are things that I just didn't know about. So it's pretty cool to find and understand those things even better.
Excellent.
I think I needed to. My microphone was in a weird place, so I think I fixed it.
Good.
You're not getting feedback, right?
No, I don't. I think it was just on your end.
Sweet.
So this week, no city council this week, which is generally, this is kind of like the beginning of campaign season. So God help us all. You can just forget that logic exists until November from here on out, because it will be silly. Wanted to start off with, we talked about this last week, but I got to tell you, this discussion about Councilor Pasillo's order about it went into the meeting as a report, just wanted information on the potential of a city-owned grocery store. Now, what's the motivation here? I saw a lot of people online, socialist takeover. Calm down.
Socialists are the worst. Socialists.
They want stuff. How dare they? For everybody. They want stuff for everybody. How dare they? And so immediately, Council Pasillo, who I absolutely adore, before anybody could speak on it, understanding what was coming at her, which was a cacophony of 1985 talking points, was about to get ripped at her. And so before anybody else could speak of her, or she gets to speak first, he amended it to say, basically work with partners and blah, 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 to find a solution, right? So she watered it down so people wouldn't lose their mind. Then people lost their mind. I wouldn't say lost their mind, but said some silly things, which we'll go over. The motivation for this, of course, is in her district. The grocery store on Gold Star. It's on Gold Star, right? Closed. And that has created a problem.
The Stop and Shop in Lincoln Plaza.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Correct.
Yeah, no worries.
Stop and Shop in Lincoln Plaza. And that's created a problem because there's a lot of people that live over there in that area. Either need to walk to or have public transportation to a grocery store.
That's
and if you live anywhere near the plaza, there's really nowhere to get food at grocery store prices, right? Have the selection and the amount of fresh and healthy food, at affordable prices, right? At grocery store prices.
And there's three major housing developments literally within a mile of Lincoln Plaza, right? So it's not like this is one of the more. Now I understand all the districts are equally populated by how they draw the maps, but this district is a much broader map, right? Because of where it is past the 290 and the Hanover and all this stretch. And so there's no grocery store, like full service grocery store. There's an Aldi's there up there, and that's there, but it's not a full service grocery store. So there's Aldi's is Aldi's is a good place if you want to save money, but it's kind of hit or miss. And a lot of it's at the end of its life. So it's when you buy tomatoes or whatever from Aldi's, you don't really, you need to eat them that night, right? You can't really have it go for a while or anything. The stuff that's there, it's towards the end.
Yeah, I mean, I've had pretty good luck with all these stuff, but I think more the point is, as you said, it's not a full grocery store, right? I mean, there's no deli, there's no fresh meats, or there's some fresh meats, I think, but it's mostly packaged stuff. I mean, prices are great, but as Council Pasillo said in the meeting, you can't shop there for a family of 4 or 5 and get the things you need to prepare food. And so what that amounts to is a food desert, really, right? It's an area where the people who either don't drive for whatever reason, either they can't afford a vehicle, or maybe they're seniors, or have disabilities, whatever it might be. And so they essentially live their life within a walking distance, or a very short travel distance.
Right.
And so you're basically cutting that portion of the population, typically people with not a lot of money.
Right.
Because otherwise they probably have a car and just drive to wherever. And so what happens is they live out of local stores. Look, we love local stores, but the local, pick one of the delis in the city, pick any one of the smaller markets in the city. It's not a grocery store, right? You wouldn't go there and shop for all your stuff for the week. You would go there and get things that you like from there, right?
Not only that, though, there's really none near there.
Right. Well, that's another point, right?
Everything's
but I'm trying to just get kind of the point of a food desert in general. And So what you have people is living out of smaller local markets or convenience stores. And what do you get at convenience stores? Nothing that's healthy, right? And so now, when that situation persists over time, you run into more frequent health problems because you're eating junk, because that's what you have access to. And and then of course, transition down into healthcare. Somebody gets sick. Well, if you typically people either without insurance or without a lot of money will wait longer and be sicker before turning up at the emergency room. The emergency room being the most expensive place in any hospital to deliver care.
Right.
And they're sicker. So in the obviously sad event that somebody has developed a form of cancer, that's often the difference between early detection, somebody that has health insurance and sees a doctor on a pretty regular basis, and somebody who never sees a doctor and turns up the ER when they're sick. They typically show up sicker, and that almost always equates to, especially in the cases of cancer, but in a lot of cases, much more expensive care. Right? If you have your cancer's early detected, this happened to my dad. They found a spot in his colon, went in, cut it out. He said, "Don't give me that." My dad, being my dad, said, "Don't give me that arthroscopic crap. Cut me open, get in there and get it." And they did, and no radiation, no chemo, walked away cancer-free because it was early detection. If you don't have early detection, you end up has spread. You end up with surgery, radiation, and then probably a course of chemo. End of the day, you're talking about the difference between 250, 200K, 250K, and maybe $1 million or more, right? Is the total cost of care. So this is a compounding thing. And we're seeing that in some parts of the city, especially in that area, the Lincoln Plaza area. And so, there's an area where the geography essentially is creating food insecurity being, economic and social, I'm reading, economic and social condition where there's limited or uncertain access to adequate food. Okay. So I also wanted to do a quick, let's talk about liberalism for a second. Small L. So we're not talking about Democrats or Republicans. We're talking about, what the theories of government that came out of the Enlightenment, largely some of the biggest supporters of were founders, those we call our founding fathers, right? And of course, lots in Europe or whatever. So classic liberalism is basically what we call, and of course, there's deviations. And this is very crude and very quick explanation. You could have a lot of argument between the lines here, but classic liberalism is essentially what we call libertarianism today. Government stay out, leave me alone, stay out of markets, regulate only when absolutely necessary, prevent monopolies, and that's about it. And that was Industrial Revolution 2, the Depression, and then the Depression went, I guess leave it alone didn't go so well. And so although he was sort of a classic liberal his whole life, FDR implemented what we call social liberalism, which is safety net stuff, right? It's still that idea of democracy and small government and stay out of my life and free enterprise, but with safety net provisions like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, etc. And then we have these neoliberals, and really started in Chile with Pinochet, really wonderful guy, and that was kind of the first iteration of neoliberal policies, economic policies at least, and then it was really Ronald Reagan being elected and Margaret Thatcher being elected that blew up this kind of reinterpretation of liberalism. Here it was Reagan, and then the link is the so-called Reagan Democrats, gag, and then Bill Clinton was basically a neolib, and both parties basically share the same general ideology, neoliberalism. And this is a sick, perverted, gross, awful ideology that basically says that all of the same tenets, democratic elections and, small government that shouldn't implement, it shouldn't interfere in markets unless it is interfering to artificially prop up markets or even create them. So it's a very interventionist view of economics, but for the benefit of business, because again, these people basically believe in the trickle down thing. If really, really rich people get more money, well, they'll just invest it, and then you can eat the scraps that fall off their table, because then you'll need a job and they'll want to pay you to build the things that they want.
Yum, scraps.
Yeah, scraps, right? And
scraps.
So I did all that. I said all that to say we heard a lot of neoliberal garbage on Tuesday. Just absolute garbage. From people I like very much. Not personal. It's never personal.
One comment that made me mad, but not on this topic.
Oh, there's a few. We'll start with the light one, which is Councilor Russell said, he's happy that part of the city-owned part got removed from the order because it was amended. And I quote, "I think the city manager has enough things on his plate now, and we don't need to get him in a butcher's apron and put him to work from a supermarket." Now, I don't, this was clearly a little bit facetious, a little bit in jest, but I mean, it just begs the question, well, where's the city? I think we need to demand. We must demand that the next city council meeting, the city manager shows up in his ticket taker uniform, or his uniform that he uses to serve concessions at the DCU center. See, because the city owns that too. And so if the city manager has to work at a place that the city owns, or is he taking tickets at Polo Park, maybe serving beer at Polo Park, I want to see the uniform.
Wait, the city owns the DCU center, Tom?
Imagine.
Wait a second, Tom. I thought DCU owned the DCU center, Tom. You have to explain that to us, because everybody thinks DCU owns that.
No, they pay some money for the naming rights. Wait,
the city owns Polar Park too, Tom? Wait, I thought the Red Sox owned Polar Park, Tom.
That's also incorrect. So I mean, again, he wasn't, wasn't like a fully serious comment. It was a little bit in jest, but that's my thought is, well, what about the other two places? But now on to like real comments. Councilor Russell said something about the Worcester Regional Food Hub playing a role in solving some of these problems. Folks, the Food Hub is a nonprofit. It's not there to give food away. It is what it does is it has 3 commercial kitchens. It's a cool thing. It's 3 commercial kitchens. It can rent those out as little as by the hour. And it's so people that are either trying to start food businesses of some sort, or are already running food businesses of some sort and making stuff at home, which is illegal. You can't do that. There's a place that they can use a real certified, or I don't know if it's certified, but a real commercial kitchen. So you can be making food there for sale legally, all above board. And then they also do, the Food Hub also does some distribution across the state, much of the state. So it's also trying to sell, people there or others, local food made, for example, made from local produce or local products, right? Good stuff, all cool stuff. And have some classes and whatever, all cool stuff.
Who gets to buy stuff from the Food Hub, Tom?
Well, I haven't been over there yet. I get the impression that they're going to have a retail store there.
Oh, no. I mean, but which businesses are getting the benefit of being able to shop there already?
Oh, well, I don't know yet. They're talking a big game about how it's gonna, I don't know. I'm not sure what it takes to rent the place or what the story is there. I haven't looked into it, but as a concept, it's a cool concept, right? Trying to help food entrepreneurs. Cool, love it. It's not there to feed the public. I'm sure we'll make some donations to food pantries and whatnot, but that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about people that the fundamental problem here isn't specifically inability to buy the food or being without home and needing access to food. It is about there's no one where to buy the food that's near them.
Right.
And I'm not sure how a place on that's in Washington Square is going to help people in Lincoln Plaza. Doesn't make any sense. And the Food Hub's primarily driven by the Chamber of Commerce, Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce. It's there to support business. It's not that it doesn't do anything in the community; it does. But it's there to support business. It is, the Chamber of Commerce globally is, I think, the largest lobbyist group for business interests, right? So it is there to promote business and help businesses grow, or its members, which are businesses.
Yeah.
You have to be a business or have a business, be involved in a business to be a member.
By the way, just real quick fact, membership in the Worcester Chamber of Commerce, so direct membership, is the most expensive in the Northeast. So just continue.
I will say, for a prior business, I was a member there, and they do have cool events and like cool network. There's some stuff they do that is cool. I don't want to just beat on them. I have issues with them politically, but for services they provide to businesses, it's decent. And so I don't like, and but Councilor Russell did make the point that the city supports. I believe the city's supporting that somehow. I don't know if it's no rent at Union Station or what. But the city has some play in that because, let's be honest, when Tim Murray speaks, institutional politicians walk. And then Councilor Calorio, who Councilor Russell ended up voting for this order, which was just for a report because he said specifically because the language had changed. Councilor Calorio and Councilor Bergman voted against it. So they didn't want to see a report. It passed 8-2. But Councilor Calorio said that the way it was originally written, I couldn't support it because in any government-run grocery store, you've got less choices, not more, less availability, not more, and higher prices. I'm not sure what that's based on. I'm not aware of a publicly owned grocery store anywhere else.
No, so it's not based on anything. It's just based on just making stuff up, literally.
Neo-liberal orthodoxy. That if government does it, it's automatically bad.
Well, and so it's just interesting that we have city councils that just will say things, but there's literally no evidence of any kind that what they're saying is true or not. So the interesting thing is that it seems that they're okay with subsidized grocery stores, right? So they're okay with there being some form of a subsidy provided to grocery stores.
Right.
So if you look at both the Shaws that's left, and then the 3 Price Chopper stores, all of them received a TIF related tax break from the city of Worcester, a state level tax break from the state of Massachusetts, and then because of the urban metropolis provision, a federal tax incentive. So all 3 they received subsidies from all 3 levels of government, those stores. So the city councilors also voted for that. So particularly the Market 32, which came in 3 councils ago, that project. So Councilor Bergman voted for the city to provide a financial incentive to a major grocery chain, and he also voted for the Shaw. So though there is a history of these councilors supporting grocery stores receiving money from the municipality. So I find that to be interesting.
Right. Well, I mean, because it is market intervention in the interest of the business, right? Because if business is healthy, everybody else will be healthy. And if people, the investment class, people who don't work for a living, who earn their money through investment, passive income, there's this is the trickle down theory in a nutshell. Is if they have extra money, they will invest it. Doesn't matter what opportunity there is for that investment. That they will just miraculously invest in creating and buying stuff to create new things, which is of course just not how reality works. People don't spend money because they have it; they spend money as they identify opportunity. Otherwise, what really rich people do is buy a lot of bonds and put it in safe investments. Really, the kind of wealth management, one aspect of it, is all about getting to 3% growth. What is 3%? About what the average inflation is. So they're just trying to maintain their wealth.
Interestingly enough, Tom, they also seem to think in that area that Market Basket is going to come and save the day for that area of our of the city.
I didn't get that impression. I thought the city manager said that they had before they opened in Shrewsbury, they were very chasing after them, and then they opened in Shrewsbury, and so they weren't interested because they're in Shrewsbury.
Right. So, but Councilor Russell and then Councilor Bergman both mentioned Market Basket hopefully coming to Lincoln. Again, this is something that's been floated around online, a lot of conversations on Nextdoor and Reddit. But then the thing that is related to that is that Market Basket has their own internal policies based on distance of store from their own stores, which is why that's one of the more successful grocery store family-owned chains in the world. And so the one on Route 20 would be way too close to that plaza for them to probably invest there. And they're not a typical off major highway store. They're usually on state highways, right? So that's why they're on Route 20, Route 9. That's why you find a lot of them kind of connected in that area. And then you also find market baskets at malls. So not plazas necessarily, but like actual malls. So that's some of those bigger spots. So maybe a place for market basket would have been like the Blackstone Valley Plaza kind of area. That's considered a mall versus what Lincoln Village is, which is really a declining two plazas. The other thing that just real quick I want to mention about that neighborhood and a lot of the folks that live up there that have to deal with is that even when the Stop and Shop was there, that road is hard to cross. So for the folks that walked, many people had to take the bus one way and then take the bus back down another way to get across that road, because the crossing that road is super dangerous. People drive, as we all know, the city of Worcester, it is really hard to drive, but it is not easy to cross over that road. Where the crosswalk is, so where Denny's used to be, when you cross over, it's just a very difficult and scary kind of thing. So if you could imagine being a family with children and you have to take your kids to the grocery store because you didn't want to leave them back in the apartment, right? And if you're going to walk across that street, the city is not designed safely to have children and families crossing the street and then go down a hill through a major parking lot, go grocery shopping, then back up that hill, up those stairs, across the hill to the housing developments. You're putting a lot on families, and you're just not taking into account the people that live in that neighborhood. And so that's just the city just not caring, in my opinion, about that specific demographic. And I'm not saying about like particular groups of people, but as far as economic class, there's been no even provision to think about how would you get people to the grocery store. Even when the Stop and Shop was there, part of the reason it failed is because it had no foot traffic, right? Everything was based on driving there. And it just wasn't a plaza that was really super conducive, because there's the Lowe's, there's all the other things, there's restaurants that are right there in that plaza that took up a lot of the parking. And then again, it just is a poor Lincoln Plaza is one of the worst designed shopping areas in the world, and that's why a lot of people go up top instead of going down bottom. It's hard to go down there. It just is.
I only got a couple more things that were said. Sure. Constable Bergman made a point that slip and falls and other like injuries, liability. We're talking about liability, like slip and falls in grocery stores are pretty prominent and can be expensive. Sure, but that's that's really anything. It's any place, right? I think he mentioned this in the context of the way I interpreted what he was saying was he mentioned it in the context of just being a landlord of a grocery store, even if you don't own the grocery store, you just own the property, right? And you're renting it out or whatever. Maybe I didn't understand him correctly, but that's what I thought he was talking about. But either way, this is obviously very generic numbers. I pulled it up from a company called Insurion, and I only used them honestly because they had general, business, general liability insurance rates by industry, right? The average, according to them, the average cost of having general liability insurance for a commercial landlord, $806 annually, $816. I'm sorry, and the general liability insurance for the average premium for a general liability insurance for a retail grocery store is I can't see because I'm blind, but $510. I wouldn't put too much stock into the actual numbers, but just general liability for a commercial renter is higher than for a retail grocery store.
Yeah.
If you own the building and also ran the grocery store, right? If it was basically the same owners, they would probably have two separate companies that do that to limit liability. They probably have to get both of those policies. So you're talking about both of them. I'm just saying, the insurance world seems to view the liability of a commercial landlord as higher than the liability of a retail grocery store. And we have commercial landlords at where? Polo Park.
Right.
And then lastly, the only other comment I'd like to highlight is Council Bergman said, we should do the things that we do. We should work on doing the things that we do better instead of not doing things we've never done before. We never owned a ballpark before, but we did that. Right. Financed we're not paying all this in the end, but financed $140 million or something. It's $1 million, even though all the guarantees that it was going to pay for itself every single year. That's not happening. It is upside down $1.1 million in the last 2 years. City income based compared to what the city has to pay for its loan obligations. And we're talking about a much, much smaller project here, a single grocery store. By the way, that is not going to be $140 million.
By the way, in the conversations that Jenny was having, the proposal was where the Stop and Shop used to be. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So it already is a property that was zoned for or operated a large commercial grocery operation. Right. It already has, as far as like people who transport groceries or bring stuff to the store, it already had a location that truck drivers were used to going to. The dairies were already delivering there. The farms were already delivering there. It's already something on the route, right? So a lot of things about the particular property make a lot of sense if you were going to place something there. The other thing is that currently, as is, the city is not receiving the full tax benefit non-operational, right? So there's if you go down there, there's like the mattress store is there, and that building, and there's like a couple other smaller stores, but on the other end where the Staples is, that's gone. Like multiple stores have closed in that stretch over the past couple of years. So the city's not receiving the full tax benefit of an operational building. They're not receiving everything that they would be receiving. So putting something in there that would potentially drive traffic there could be a good thing, right? You would think there's some way. But the whole point that the original order was to ask for information about the possibility. And they cannot possibly, because we're in an election, apparently there's a constituency in Worcester that is like radically against a potential grocery store that is different than a normal grocery store. And did the majority of councilors come out swinging against this thing right off the bat? So much so that Jenny had to change the thing. But in particular, the representative from the Chamber of Commerce who came down to hammer it, right? So that was just an interesting thing to ask for the councilors to file it. That was what it was. So you can't even have a conversation about it. The chamber doesn't even want to talk about this conversation, this potential option. And I'm just thinking to myself, even with the food hub, what would another potential wholesaler? Because often municipal grocery stores or state-owned or that kind of operation are usually wholesalers, right? So they can usually offer people lower prices that are normally offered to like businesses, but they're different than like a major wholesaler like a Sam's Club or a BJ's where people go and have to buy in bulk. In a grocery store like this, people would be able to buy small because the purchaser was able to buy in bulk, but they pass along the savings to the local customers. And in the other places where these kind of operations exist, and like Sarah put a cooperative, that's
I'm definitely going to talk about co-ops. I promise, Sarah.
Right. So, but what co-ops do is they often sell to the same small markets that the chamber guy was trying to say that this would hurt. And if you actually look in the city of Worcester, there really aren't a lot of wholesalers. So creating an opportunity for the local markets not to have to go outside of the city to buy or to have everything shipped in, right? So because that's one of the things that is going on. You have a ton of stuff. If you go look at Uber Eats and DoorDash, and then what's it called, Instacart, a lot of small markets shop through those delivery services too. So then they end up paying higher prices for the delivery service. So overall, an operation, a potential thought like this of maybe a nonprofit that operated it, maybe a co-op, maybe something else, maybe the city operating it. It is possible, folks. Doesn't make it socialism for the city to operate something like that. Just like the DCU Center being owned by the city isn't socialism.
Nope.
Isn't at all, right? So there could be, some kind of process that this would lead to that I think could even actually generate revenue for the city. So you could help small businesses and you could generate revenue that would offset some of our tax burden. So the thing is that, well, not everyone, that's the thing about so Fred, it's interesting. I like that. Can you put Fred's comment, the not everyone comment, on the board there? All right, so this is exactly one of the things that happened there. You can't have your cake and eat it too, folks. You can't do that. You can't claim at the city manager's self-evaluation, where he got 5 stars from everybody, that he's doing great and the city's doing great, and then also say that you don't trust the government. You can't do that.
Well, you can.
But if you do, then how can you say he's doing a good job? How can you say he's doing a good job if you don't trust him? If you don't trust the government, because the government all runs under him, right? So it just doesn't make any sense. But we heard that from Councilor Bergman. The government shouldn't be in the business of doing these things. There's other things we don't do well, is what he said. There's other things we don't do well. Well, my statement to Councilor Bergman then, why didn't you bring that up at the city manager's evaluation?
Yeah.
Right? So if there's stuff that we don't do well, why aren't you criticizing the city manager and bringing that up?
Fair point.
What world do we live in? And I'm telling you, folks, those of you who are voters and you're trying to make your decision, they literally are saying to your face that they think you're stupid. They do. The majority on the council thinks that the average voter in the city of Worcester that you couldn't pick up, that's what they were saying. That's what they do. They say this week after week after week, Tom. They laugh in the face of the voters of Worcester.
Right. So one of the objections I heard was some version of government shouldn't be competing with private business, right? Concerned about hurting other businesses. Well, the thing is there, to do this would not be to get into the market to compete. It would get into the market to correct a market failure. Because the market, and this is the thing about neolibs, is they think that markets are gifts from God and they're always perfect and supply and demand will regulate everything and everything will be fine. I don't know if you've seen the healthcare system in this country, but it doesn't work. Markets have failures. Allowing markets to set prices, etc., is good. When private industry can do things, it profits and people are served. Great. We would prefer that. In this case, we're talking about an area of our city where the market has failed those people because they don't have an option to get fresh, healthy, affordable food.
That's right.
Because the place that they went to closed and there's nothing else around. So this is not about intervening in the market. This is about correcting a market failure.
Also, there's another part of this, Tom. So if you go back to the argument about chickens, right? The regulations that exist and the current version of the city council doesn't allow for farming or animal raising or allowing people to grow their own fresh food. It's just not set up that way. So unless you have your own garden, unless you have an area where you can do that, or you're really close to the border in Leicester, or the really close to the border in Holden, there's no farm immediately close to you. And again, they love to have their cake and eat it too. So Mo Bergman, remember, he said, people don't move to Worcester to be close to farms. Well, it turns out you're right about that, Mo. You're right about that, because that's why all the grocery stores are falling apart, right? So if you continue, and by the way, this is not just one grocery store. The Price Chopper on Cambridge Street also closed earlier this year, folks. That's the second grocery store in 18 months that's closed in the city of Worcester. That doesn't include on Mill Street. The Big D has been gone for a long, long time, right? It doesn't include other opportunities, other stores that have closed over the years. And then the small businesses, since all of a sudden the Chamber of Commerce is coming out swinging for the small businesses, the one downtown grocery store that we did have, Maker to Main, was absolutely destroyed by the city's parking policies, and it wasn't able to survive, right? And it closed from 2 different locations. It was on Main Street, and then it shifted over to I think it was on Green or Water Street, the second location. But it closed twice because it just wasn't able to survive because there was no parking available that really helped it. And even the little 15-minute free thing came after it closed. So all of these policies, Tom, are interconnected to the results that we're seeing. So the market isn't just affected by, hey, everybody wants the price of bacon to be a certain price, and so we're gonna, we need X amount of bacon to handle the supply. By the way, I am a demander of bacon. I want my bacon. And so it also is affected by regulation, parking, location, at the time of day, the way the businesses operate. I mean, since COVID, even all the diners, there's no 24-hour city in Worcester anymore. You don't have any operations really set up. Even the boulevard, right? Nothing's really available. The Boulevard diner stays open a little bit late, and the Kenmore opens early on certain days. But there's no more 24-hour operations except for Burger King, which isn't really open 24 hours. It's only open for DoorDash, right? So it's not like we're getting this opportunity to have like a city that runs around the clock either. And all of these things are interconnected. And the city wants you to try to only hold them as an isolated thought. And so just to see the majority of the council just come out and basically threaten Jenny. That's what that was by Councilor Bergman. Councilor Bergman was saying, I'll support it if, and then he ended up not supporting even the reports. He didn't vote for it, right? He ended up voting against the report that Jenny wanted. So that's what's happening on our council. It's like if you don't say exactly what we want, we won't let your report go through. But then, Tom, at the same time, if someone else wants a report and it doesn't go through, what do you hear from those same counselors?
Oh, absolutely. Just a report. Just a report. Just wanted information.
Absolutely. It's just unrighteous indignation if a counselor's other report is going to get stopped. So it's amazing to watch the double standard take place when we're talking. So there's some Dunkin' Donuts. I'm sorry, Fred. Do you think that solves the food desert? Do we think that solves the food desert? No, not at all. Not at all.
And so, it doesn't necessarily have to be that the city operated the store, just like it doesn't operate the DCU Center.
Right.
And just a note on DCU Center finances, by the way. I found a financial statement that was for end of year fiscal 23. So this is as of June 30th, 2023. I couldn't find last year's. The DCU Center distributed $1.2 million to the city in that year. However, DCU Center has assets of $1.5 million less than its liabilities, which means it's in debt. The DCU Center owes the city $4.2 million for cash advances, surplus, basically the city financing its operations, right? So the city pulled out 1.5 in that year, and that was kind of the year, it was the first full non-COVID year, right?
Right.
And look, that's fine with me. I wish it was booked more, and I wish the city generated more revenue from it. Because we've heard from everybody in council, everybody to the person. They're very concerned about federal funding cuts, right? The funding bomb is coming. I'm not sure what's going on with the current school. It sounds like they released at least some of the money that the current education funds that were held up from the feds. It sounds like they released some of that. But I mean, it's going to come somewhere. I mean, the funding bomb's coming. And I see a lot of complaining and concern about it. I don't see any idea how to deal with it. Build more hotels, I guess, that nobody wants to build. Because that's the only time that, they're also on the DCU Center, there was an economic, what did they call it? Was it economic impact study that was released earlier this year?
Right.
And said in April that the venue has generated $200 million in direct spending and $341 million in total economic output over the last decade, including $7.3 million in hotel spending over that same decade. The city gets, I believe, 5.75% of hotel spending. Right. So that's over 10 years. This is direct revenue coming to the city over 10 years, $419,750.
So I love that you did the math to take. So the funny thing is they like to present it in those big chunks, right? So 10 years, right. 20 years.
42 grand a year.
Because the number.
Grand a year.
Yeah, so 42 grand a year, right? Is what you're saying? 42 grand a year. So $42,000. How much is an average hotel room? $150.
Yeah. Right? There was some numbers on the volume in there. I just didn't, I was looking for the money.
No, but city if you actually think about the hotels that are in the city of Worcester really quickly. you would probably be able to see that we have not operated the city of Worcester at capacity for hotels ever. Which we all know. We live here in Worcester. No one comes and stays in our hotels except for certain events. There are some events that do very well. Some of the conventions at the DCU Center do sell out the Hilton Garden Inn, and the hotels that WPI was going to convert into dorms, they do get sold out sometimes, but it's usually very rare, right? It's not a normal course of event for all the rooms to be booked in the city of Worcester, and we're competing with Auburn and some of the other, and Shrewsbury, some of the other hotels that are like on the borders who offer us much significantly reduced price, right? So, well, that was what I was going to get to. Maria put up that we need better concerts. Okay, again, this is a connected policy. The pricing that DCU Center, which is remember, this is a property management company that was hired by the city.
It's actually the largest venue management company in the world, just to be clear.
That's right. That company charges extremely high rents for music and acting and other other kind of events. Very, very high, one of the highest in the region, in some cases competing with New York City for pricing, which is of course nonsense because we're Worcester. So what has happened is all the casinos, so particularly in Connecticut, which are only about an hour and a half from us, and then the one in Rhode Island, all three of those casinos offer significantly lower venue rent because they are subsidized by gambling, right? So they have completely taken away all the concert opportunities that used to exist here in the city of Worcester. And now you only really have one niche kind of musical thing, which is the Palladium, right? And so none of the really giant touring acts come to Worcester anymore. Now, if you remember, back in the 90s, in the early 2000s, that wasn't the case when it was still the Centrum, right? I saw Lynyrd Skynyrd and I saw Janet Jackson and I saw, I know that's an interesting combination, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Janet Jackson. I saw Bobby Brown there. I remember when Whitney Houston was going to go and then she was sick. And so the Centrum used to have really big national touring acts on a regular basis. Also, if everybody remembers, the Celtics used to play there 3 or 4 times a year. The Bruins used to play there 3 or 4 times a year. But they stopped because the city priced them out with this management company. And so it's just been, 20 or 30, years now where we used to have, more acts that would come in and kind of sell things out and create more revenue. The DCU Center is actually not the report, the city manager's report. If you go look at it, I think there was 90 dates where it was empty. 90 days. And that's not the only venue that's like that. The same thing happens to the Mechanics Hall, the Hanover Theater, Tuckerman Hall. These venues are priced very, very, very high for the market of Worcester, and they consistently, if not regularly, don't sell out, and they're not booked every single night. It's a generalized issue. Is this idea of Worcester has priced itself so high, and it's kind of connected to the housing costs. We have these apartment buildings that are, it was funny listening to last night, the Revington having that, I guess they just recently bumped up thanks to their RealPage software. They have a set of studios that are $1,900. So you get yourself a nice studio at the Revington for $1,900. In what market does that make sense? New York City? Tokyo? What are we doing here, folks? That's what's going on. That's the kind of stuff that's happening in the city of Worcester. And if you bring that up to a city councilor, they will not answer that question directly. That's another way to challenge them. Ask them that, and they will not answer it to you. They will try to direct it to something else. And that's what you're seeing on a regular basis. There's another policy later on we could talk about that was proposed with the tax offset for landlords that's connected to this, right? It has nothing to do with helping lower the cost for regular people. It has everything to do with Tom's argument about trickle-down economics, that the rich people, if we give them more money, they'll spend it on us. But we have 30 years of proof now that that's not true.
But I just want to address this real quick. Maria's thought about us having a forum. I'd love to. I would love to have candidates answer questions related to the police department. They won't show up. That's what will happen.
We have been trying, and so has Manny. and other media outlets for years now. And me and Tom in particular with Manny for at least 3 consecutive council cycles where we've offered every single candidate, every single sitting councilor opportunities to come on, whether it's this show, Manny's show, do a venue, do something like that, and they just don't show up. They really don't show up. Maria, you are Zach. Maria, they're not like you. So they just don't show up, and they're not willing to be challenged. I mean, even at probably the easiest forum of them all, the NAACP forum, where Fred Taylor gives the questions in advance to all the candidates at the forum, you still have candidates not come because it's not fair, which is just ridiculous. The city of Worcester, they don't feel they need to participate in those forums. I think that's a really big thing. They don't feel the need for it because they don't believe that there's going to be a shift in the electorate. They think that the same people that have always been elected, a lot have been on the show, Sarah, but that's an individual person. So when you have someone go on as an individual, that's one thing. But what Maria is suggesting is having a forum where there's multiple candidates talking to each other. And that's what they're afraid of, because there are some candidates that might not be able to answer questions from their colleagues if they were forced to in an open field. There was actually a great forum in District 4 at the Catholic Church back when Maria was running for District 4 councilor. And what you saw there with that forum is that there were several candidates that were just unprepared for the test. And the distinction between candidates really came down to how much money they had. So the folks who had more money did better, and the folks that didn't have money. But there was definitely some questions that night that seemed unfair. I've said this out loud before. I thought Maria was kind of attacked that night. That there was people that were only asking her tough questions, and they were giving some softballs to Ted Costas and Maureen Schwab. Right. So there was a very interesting way that we approach it. I think that an open forum would be a great idea for the city of Worcester. I just don't know that the candidates or the incumbents would want to participate.
Right. So just to wrap this up, look, if just picking one grocery store, if the city wanted to open a grocery store in Webster Square across from Shaw's, I'd be against that. There's no need for that, right?
Right.
That's not what we're talking about. But if we have an area of the city that is not being served by private industry, do we just wait for a private business to get interested, and until then those people can eat from Cumbies?
Pretty much.
It sounds like the message, really.
So that it's related then back to the way that we treat certain districts. Certain districts just don't have the same seat at the table, it seems, despite having an elected representative, and a lot of their interests are kind of set aside. And that's just really not fair. Now, let me say this about Jenny's district. She's not the first councilor that struggled with getting people to pay attention to what's been happening in Lincoln Village and Lincoln Plaza for this many years. So we have a lot of folks who watch our show who are residents of that area who know that that's been an area that's been under a struggle for a long time. Because again, the city of Worcester was not designed in a grid where every block is exactly the same. We live on hills, and so we live on a bunch of hills, and so the topographical nature of our city makes us have to think about distinct things and ways to, maybe access stores in a different way. And so there's really no opportunity, Tom, and what I see is for people to even be allowed to think creatively. Because, as much as I like Jenny's idea, I think an even cooler idea would be a municipal farm right there. Let's throw a farm out there. Let's start digging. Let's dig up some of that cement. All we have is parking. We just got parking for days down there. Why don't we have an area where we could grow some food for people, or maybe there's a place that we could have animals. Now, I get it. That's a lot of work. You would need to have it. But what if we had it involved with one of the high schools? What if Worcester Tech had a farming program that operated out of that area? Why can't we think creatively about our city? And anytime we try to think creatively, or even one person tries to do something different, does the majority always shut them down? Shut them down.
I mean, it's just worship of markets.
Yeah.
It will solve all the problems in the world.
But people want fresh groceries. They do. That's why they travel. Listen. How about this? We'll put this in the chat right now. How many people who live in the city of Worcester, when you have the opportunity, instead of going to the Walmart that is on Boylan Way, you drive to the one in Oxford or the one in Leicester, right? For those of the folks that are Worcester residents, right? That will take the extra 20 minutes to drive to either of those Walmarts because they think that the groceries are cleaner, they think that the groceries are fresher at those stores than they do at the main Walmart. Go watch. I guarantee at least one person will throw that in the chat.
Yeah, and so lastly, this isn't the only option to go about this, right?
Yeah.
There are some really, co-ops are basically democratically run. Its members are its board of directors, and one person, one vote. There are in the state of Colorado, and you can incorporate a business anywhere, right? You don't know. I mean, if you want to incorporate a business in Colorado, you just get a lawyer out there to do it for you, and you never even have to go there. You can incorporate a business in a state you've never been in. That's perfectly legal. So in Colorado, they have some, I think it's been about 10 years since these laws were passed. They have a couple different models of co-ops, including one where it's still running. The whole purpose of a co-op is democratically managed. And by manage, I mean board of directors level. You typically a board of directors would hire a general manager or whatever you call them, and they would actually run the day-to-day of the business. But it's the big top line management board of directors type decisions are done in a democratic way. And one of these other models they have there, it actually makes it easier to raise money, right? Because there's no incentive to invest in a co-op. You buy a membership, just like everybody else did. Everybody pays the same thing, and everybody gets the same vote. They have some models where it makes it easier basically to raise money. So it's when you pay out, because profit is paid out by decision of the board. You keep what it reserves. You decide how much money you're going to pay out. Just like a board of directors would of a corporation pays out to investors. So the payouts would be based on proportion of, you can still buy stock in it basically, but management decisions, there is no shareholder meeting where there are decisions made by proportion of ownership, one person, one vote always, right? Yeah. So they've done some like different models of co-ops there that could be a fit, right? And the city could help finance the startup of that. Could develop programs to train people on how to start these things, give them some help, like do some sort of almost a public partnership where the city's at least providing some funds or some help or something to solve this specific problem that this area has. I don't think a co-op would make a lot of sense, but for example, municipal broadband, but something like that. I don't know if they could or what the drama of it would be, but I mean, talking to Shrewsbury and rolling that out in stages slowly from the Shrewsbury border. So you do it in stages, you can manage costs, right? That seems to be is something that is profitable for Shrewsbury. It adds money to its tax rolls from delivering what is essentially a utility service to its residents, right? Where is the concern about the funding bomb besides we're just going to wait and see what happens? Trying to do, we also happen to have the lowest median household income, the seventh lowest median household income of the 59 cities in the state. So that means that our, revenue per individual, like tax revenue per individual, is much lower, like way lower than Cambridge. Cambridge has a bigger budget than us, and it has like 80,000 less people because it's, the wealth of the income of the people that live there is so much higher. So, I think that this is kind of the future, is municipalities delivering their own services like trash, like maybe, broadband or some combination of those things, and having these when needed to fill a market gap, having, either city run or city owned, where the city is earning revenue off of solving a problem that in the marketplace. I really believe that this is, going to see more of this in the future because, independent cities should be cities, especially because they have enough revenue to do it. Towns would be much more difficult, but nonetheless, kind of insulating yourself from dependency on the federal government. Because sometimes you get somebody elected like you have now who just wants to cut everything.
That's true. So then, real quick, if you remember, people who've been watching the show for a couple of years now know that one of the predictions that I have made was related to Verizon interconnecting the FiOS junction boxes, and that once it was completed, then Verizon would select a regional provider. And once the regional provider is selected, that particular provider would provide the kind of the base footprint for how FiOS moves through the city. So where the signal is coming through, there's usually a local provider because Verizon's a major company. And Tom, that took place about 6 weeks ago. Do you know who they picked to be the junction, the switcher company? Do you know? Does anybody know?
I can only imagine. There's probably only one option.
It's Cellco. It is our neighbors in Shrewsbury. So that means that right now, as of right now, every single subscriber to Verizon is paying Shrewsbury. So this year's revenues for the town and city of Shrewsbury are going to jump astronomically because Verizon has had a major subscriber shift as people have left and further continue to leave Charter Spectrum. By the way, all of these things predicted by your friendly neighborhood cable advisory committee 3 and 4 years ago. And so actually someone posted a bill online the other day in the Worcester Political Dialogue, and it had Cellco right there and I was like, oh yeah. So again, the city manager told me that I was wrong about that. And I'm looking forward to asking him in person at some point, hey, it turns out I was right. And that's because Verizon owns that building, because Verizon with National Grid owns most of the telephone poles in the state, not just in Worcester. And then the pass through the wire thing, the city owns the rest of them. Spectrum doesn't own anything. So in our city, it was always going to be, unless there's a municipal junction, there would be some place outside of the city that would become the major hub. And that happened. We've been talking about, by the way, all of you who remember Greater Media, right? When Greater Media operated cable in the city of Worcester, will remember that their service station was in Shrewsbury, in the same building where Cellco currently resides. So there's a lot of things related to this that have been going on for many years. But that fee, which it's like $1 per person, Tom, let's say I think the last report I have, which I think is January, so it doesn't reflect the next 2 quarters, is that Verizon has 9,000 broadband subscribers now in the city of Worcester, 9,000 households. So let's just say that the fee is $1, right? Let's say it's $1. It's probably like a percentage that floats. That's $9,000 a month that the city is losing to Shrewsbury. That could be coming into the city coffers. Now, that's not a lot of money. That's only $100,000 a year. But if you increase that subscriber base from 9,000 to 50,000, which is where Charter Spectrum used to be back in the 80s, then what are you looking at? A really significant amount of money. And that's just if it was just a pass-through fee. That doesn't include, advertising, taxes, yada, 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 yada. That's just the operations fee. And so there's all kinds of money there. So then maybe some of that money could go towards, a subsidized grocery store or something like that we could offer. The other thing is, Tom, and I know we're going to move on to another subject, but there's never any pressure on the major companies of Worcester to ever have to do anything. Do you know who's right by that Stop and Shop? The largest insurance campus in New England is right by that store. It's called Hanover Insurance. By the way, that was a ceded deed of land. If you want to get into what happened in the 1970s and the Hanover Insurance Company and their major millions and the state building their own highway off ramp, there's a lot of history that you could go into and dig into when it comes to the Hanover Company. That's related to, by the way, the failing Commerce Building on Main Street, because that's where Hanover used to be located as they've shifted down the road to their own special highway off-ramp. But why can't Hanover invest in those properties, right? Why couldn't Hanover create, for example, a special insurance package, Tom, that might have been a little bit less for people who invest into the city of Worcester? There's never any creativity in how we would get already existing municipal partners to participate in helping the municipal economy thrive. Because based on their theory, right, if everybody gets richer at the top, isn't that going to affect everybody's bottom line? So why wouldn't Hanover want to get involved? That's because, again, they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. It's really not they don't even believe in their own theory because they know in practice it doesn't work out for the people at the bottom.
Yep, facts. So I'm not saying has to be. I mean, oh, we have to have the city has to run a grocery. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in certain scenarios, like again, services like utilities or maybe trash collection. A lot of that I believe is contracted out by the city, and of course that company's obviously earning a profit. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. And or we finance it, or the real spin I would put on Polar Park is we finance $140 million, of which they're paying, I forget how much, 40 million or something, 50 million, I forget what it is. But they financed 140 some million over 30 years, which is is absorbing this big chunk of the city has the bandwidth to borrow for big projects. And what did we get? We got down $1.1 million.
Yeah.
And I mean, at this point, I don't know that it's. I mean, they anticipated all this development that's not going to happen there.
Right.
Shocking. That was going to, in their scheme of the area where they're calculating all this tax revenue from. And what did we get? We got largely low-wage service jobs that are seasonal.
True, and not only that, if you on Hank's show, Dr. Charles Steinberg has started to make the media rounds. If anybody knows Dr. Charles, he lives inside the Worcester Public Markets. He lives in one of the fancy apartments up there. But anyways, Dr. Charles was a longtime employee of the Red Sox, and he was involved with the Kenmore Square makeover. So if you go look at that, I think that's probably a cautionary tale. You should really be worried about the fact that this guy is involved. Dr. Charles is a very nice man, but you really have to look at this idea that he went on Hank's show and said that the team is going to now encourage people to get involved with the development around the ballpark. What I heard is the entities that are associated with the Red Sox are going to get involved. That's not necessarily a good thing, right? So it's not necessarily a good thing. That's actually directly related to the gentrification. So a lot of the neighborhoods that were connected to Kenmore and Fenway in Boston were driven into the ground, and there's no more locals in that area. So what this does is it kind of goes to the point that a lot of the people have said is that eventually, if the ballpark got its way, that you would then lose any character in the neighborhood, and we've already seen it now. We already see that now, and they haven't even filled the capacity of the buildings that they said. By the way, 2 years ago it would be 90% full, right? Are we at 90% full yet, Tom? For those,
we're not built yet.
Oh, we're not even built yet for all the buildings.
Right.
Oh, okay. So we're not 90% full. But you know what it has done? 100% kill small businesses in the area. The most recent being the Queen's Cups, the cupcake bakery place that was up on Water Street, right? So, but anyways, that's what's happening. Those businesses are getting killed because, again, this kind of development is not for small businesses. I recently went by. I know the owner of Freshway Pizza, which is diagonally across from where Whiskey on Water is, whose business is almost entirely delivery, and then college students who get drunk at the old bars down there, going in and getting slices afterwards, right? Because there's several bars in that area that are directly nearby that will go to Freshway Pizza. But what's happened is there's a new pizza place with the little bowling alley, and I'm all excited about bowling. I want to go candlepin bowling, yes, 100%. But it's subsidized by the apartment building, so they're going to be able to afford to be competitive with the small mom and pop thing. So it's probably likely that we're going to lose some of the pizza shops that are down there too, right? They're already competing with each other. There's already 5 pizza places within like a 2-block area there. And then you added a subsidized one. What's going to happen? They're going to cannibalize. Someone's going to lose their business because of that. And that's realistically what happens when the city subsidizes operations versus creating maybe a co-op structure or something where a nonprofit could operate something or something else creative that could help the area.
And lastly, I just say, and I've said this before, there are no corporate partners. They are not your partner. Corporations do not partner with cities. Corporations are there. They have a legal, financial responsibility, to maximize profits for their investors.
100%.
That's it. That is their sole purpose. Nonprofits are different.
Yeah.
Nonprofits are different. They don't have to be different. They're not always different, but they can be different. But especially a business that has investors, and especially a business that has institutional investors on Wall Street, especially these big, financial management firms or hedge funds or whatever. Those are people that when they invest in Exxon, most of them probably don't know because it's going through a different company that's managing their investments, and all they care about is how much money they get out. They have no connection to the business whatsoever.
They don't care about the people or what the companies are even doing with their money. They just care about the money.
Right. I mean, and look, you're giving money away, and you want that money to bring you back money. Otherwise, you wouldn't give it to them. I get it. But when you're thinking about this from a public entity like a city, and the businesses you work with, they have a responsibility. Not they want to, not they hope they have a responsibility to maximize profit for their investors. That's their sole purpose. Or at least that's their primary purpose, at the very least. So, again, I don't think that the city should start going into industry everywhere you turn. But in certain aspects, very big projects, that's usually what government does well. Actually, does it inefficiently, but does good, big, huge things well. The federal government does huge things pretty well. They're costly, they're not efficient, but anything that's huge is typically not efficient because it's huge, right?
Right.
But in certain circumstances, when you have a market failure that leaves residents kind of out of luck, and there's an opportunity there to maybe, generate at least a small amount of revenue, you don't have that responsibility to maximize profit, so you can, pay people in a difficult neighborhood to find a job, decent wages. You can offer products at decent prices and still have some sort of ROI on taxpayer money, because that's what it is. It's an investment of taxpayer money, and our investment of taxpayer money in Polar Park is $1.1 million down. So, but again, this goes to this neoliberal, twisted ideology that it's okay for government to just give money away to businesses, because if business does well, everybody does well, except that's all false.
True.
So I don't know Councilor Florio well, it's just a matter of circumstances, but I know Councilor Bergman quite well. I feel like I know Councilor Bergman quite well, as well as Councilor Russell, and I like them both very much. But so it's not personal, but I was quite irritated by that conversation.
Yeah, they were dead wrong.
It's just a bunch of 1985 talking points. It really is. It's Reagan Democrats telling me it's going to trickle down, and I'm sick of hearing it. I'm sick of it. It's not. It doesn't work.
I'm with it.
Okay. 1 hour and 12 minutes on one topic. Go us. There was an ongoing discussion of if the city should opt into a state law that would require housing with 4 or more units in it, when it does major repairs, major renovation, that it would be required to implement sprinkler systems in these buildings. It's obviously very costly.
Yeah.
But the other side of the coin is we have an old housing stock.
Yeah.
And when things catch on fire, it's really bad.
Yeah.
As we've seen multiple times in the last, several years. So, I'm a little conflicted on this. You tell me what you think.
All right. So the automatic sprinkler thing, as I've been doing the fire documentary, I've had to do some research on what does that term even mean, right? So automatic sprinklers are more than one device that exists, but generally speaking, an automatic sprinkler detects heat, in some capacity, and then turns on and suppresses what's in its kind of nearby vicinity. And as the systems have gotten more complicated, the reason the costs have gone up is because there needs to be more points where whatever the suppression is, whether it's air, compressed air, and then water, straight water, oil, or some other some other fire retardant, right? There needs to be more sprinkler heads, right? A lot of these buildings, when they are trying to cover up the age of the buildings have created drop-down ceilings. So a lot of folks live with ceilings that are dropped down, and those drop-down ceilings usually have tiles. Those tiles are like instantaneous combustion engines, right? So if a fire takes place in a building with those tiles, the materials they're made out go up really quickly. So often the sprinklers will be above them. And we live in an old city, so a lot of people have stains on their tiles and that kind of stuff because the sprinkler heads, the older systems tend to drip, right? So that's there's like a history of this in the city of Worcester. We kind of all know what it is, but if you're thinking about that, if you live in a building where there's ceiling tiles above you, look up, and if you see a brown stain, this is kind of where the conversation is going. That system to replace that costs a ton of money because it's not just taking it out and putting a new pipe in and putting a device on there and replacing it. It's also changing the way that the system interacts with the utilities of the city, right? So if you were to go from what's called a dry system that has compressed air and then water to a wet system, you have to change how much water is being pulled into the system on a regular basis. That also can be complicated because we have winters up here where the pipes can freeze. So then if you have water in the system all the time. So there's a lot of complicated stuff that goes into these automatic and any kind of sprinkler system at all. The problem is the cost so high that we should ignore what happens when something goes wrong? And so, in the city, that's really what the question is that when it does go wrong, people die. That's what happens. When this stuff goes wrong, people die. But not just regular people, firefighters die. And in our city, we literally, part of the legacy of the history of Worcester is firefighters dying. Facts. And that sucks to talk about it, right? Because it's hard, but it's true. And Tom and I have spent a ton of time over the past couple of years talking about the police reforms, right? And often you find like the firefighters and the police are like kind of tied together as first responders. But it's not the case. They're two different entities, and they do two very, very different functions. Sometimes they do have to go to the same place at the same time, but they're there for different reasons. The reason you have a fire department, right? So it's like sometimes there's no fires, right, Tom? So what are we paying the firefighters to do? Be ready. That's what we pay them to do. We pay them to be ready. And if they're not ready, people die. That's just the way it is. And so we pay them to be ready enough to come in and save people in the worst case scenarios because we live in the oldest area in the country. Massachusetts, New England is the oldest area in the country. So we have a lot of old buildings that were built really close together because there wasn't a lot of urban centers. And then it was all factory town kind of situations. And so people piled in together. And then we have these triple deckers. Back then, triple deckers were viewed culturally differently than they are today. So back then you had families, Irish and Italian families with 14, 15, 16 people living in each apartment, and that was normal. But that's not how it is anymore, and we need to recognize that. And populations have changed. Now, I know the city council and our president are really resistant to demographic change. They don't like that at all. They don't like that at all, right? So we create these other systems. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about the sprinklers. The thing is, Tom, is that the entire argument is predicated on one significant false statement, and that is that the costs of redoing this are always going to be passed on to this anonymous renter somewhere down the line, right? And then often the single landlord, and they create this idea that there's this landlord guy out there. He's just a regular guy, and his whole business is just that one building. And he doesn't make a lot of money because he's not charging a lot of rent. I don't know where this guy is in Worcester, right? And so on and so forth. They create this argument that there's this person that's going to be really impacted by it. But they don't ever listen to the actual law, which is an opt-in law anyways. The city has to opt in for this policy to be in effect. So 3 quick points, and then I'll be done. Point number 1, if the city opts in, there's state dollars attached to this policy that could help some of these buildings that are going to be changed over. It doesn't apply to the big, massive buildings. They have different programs they have to apply for. But the 4 units and more buildings, right? They would actually have access to some state dollars related to their renovations. And if you don't believe me, talk to Jeff Torres, owner of the Torres Group, who's one of the sponsors of all these programs that we're involved with, and he'll help you walk through that stuff, right? He knows that kind of stuff. Talk to him. But the idea is that you could, while you're building, you could apply for money that would offset the cost of the sprinkler system. That's one. Two, the process of doing it is not as dramatic as they make it out to be, which is what Kate's order was about. The economic impact on building whatever in relation to it. So if there's going to be an offset, and then there's going to be potentially a tax incentive for keeping the rents low, wouldn't those two things kind of combine together to create an incentive for the person, the builder, the owner, the whoever that's doing the thing? And then finally, the third thing, I've already said it, but I have to reinforce it. Tom, the third thing is this. At what point does people dying or the potential for people dying become more important than those economic uncertain things? What point is it? Is it and you kind of alluded to it in the previous section where you're talking about how governments do big things pretty well, but not efficiently, right? And that's very much true. They also allow people to die pretty well and not efficiently.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so that's the thing here. It's like it's always the argument that never gets to the person. And so, we've had businesses displaced. I believe, it is my belief that the reason that this is happening with this law is a personal vendetta against one city councilor, Inatel Hajiaj, because she's the one who brought it up. They don't want her to be the one to bring it up. That's one. And the second thing, Tom, is there are vested interests, including city councilors who own properties who would be affected by these costs. And that's why these items are being held, because Councilor Carlson's not even responding to anybody about why she's holding this item on a regular basis. There's no response. The fire chief has told them to opt in. Every one of the fire union heads have said to opt in. The head of the state fire marshal, hey, you should opt in. The city manager has said that they should opt in. Why then are two councilors, it seems, just two that are kind of holding this thing, in the public safety chief and Candy Merrill Carlson, stopping this from going forward? It just doesn't make any sense, Tom, unless there's some vested interest. So it's my opinion, and I'm sorry, I'm saying this. This is slightly informed speculation. Some of the central characters to the narratives that Tom and I have been dealing with over the past couple of years, they are very intricately connected to this issue when it comes to they don't want to spend their money, but they don't like Atel Hajiaj. It's really those two things. And I'm sorry to say it. And I'm not telling you to vote for Atel. Go vote for whoever you want to vote for. But the fact is, it shouldn't be people's lives and it shouldn't be firefighters' lives that we're playing with, because it does kill people when these buildings go up in flames. And please, I hope that there are no fires. I really do hope. And I hope that the firefighters there, but there are going to be fires, because that's where we live. It's not just if we change all the buildings, Tom. Even if we do put these sprinklers in, you know what's going to happen? Fires, because that's what happens in our weather conditions, because we have these crazy dry spells followed by heavy humidity. It leads to fire. It led to fire before we built any buildings. Back when the Native Americans were walking around here, there would be brush fires all over the place, because that's the nature of the land that we live on. So since we decided to come and take this land and build up all our triple deckers, we have to accept the consequences of it, which is fire. And so then we should at least do the best possible thing we can, is to keep people safe, is by opting into this sprinkler law. And there's no building coming online like tomorrow that's going to have to change over. It's going to be buildings in the future that are connected to our city council and embedded leadership who just don't want to spend the money.
So there's quite possibly some truth to that. Real quickly, Sam, I will gladly talk about the CEO thing with Coldplay. Just give us a minute here. So I think there's a couple reasons to have concern. I generally come down on your side. Like, it's an old housing stock. The problem is, somebody that is, it's interesting that I think it starts at 4 or more units, right? And I mean, these these 3-deckers would all be opted out. They would all be exempt, and that's probably where the most of the risk is, right? Because they're just the older houses. On the other hand, though, I mean, look, if you're living in a 4-unit place, right, and you're renting 3 units out, and you want to do some remodeling or whatever, and suddenly, that's going to cost you an extra 20-25 grand. That's going to hit those people really hard, right? I mean, you're talking about refinancing probably and a whole bunch of stuff. So I have a little more tolerance for the concerns about it. And I mean, I'm almost less married to it because it does opt out. I think probably where the most risk is in the oldest buildings, which are the 3-deckers, right? So I'm like a little less. This has to happen. I do think it should happen, but I mean, I get the concerns about it. Like, the people that are going to be hard hit by this are going to get killed, are going to get crushed by it. Not crushed, but they're going to get whacked pretty hard by it.
But so that's a good point, except it turns out that's really not the case. The case is that the vast majority of these 4-unit or more things are owned by LLCs that own a ton of properties all over the city. So we're not really looking at this lone single person that rents out 3 units and lives in it as a live-in landlord. Those are mostly triple deckers. The people that are being affected by this are people with a ton of money that can afford it. The triple decker thing was supposed to be affected by the rental registry. Right, so we were supposed to start inspecting those buildings,
and that got opted out,
and they ended up opting out from that. And if you go look at that, it turns out a lot of those triple deckers are owned by LLCs that own a ton of properties in the city, and a lot of the people that own those LLCs are connected city officials. It just is what it is, folks. They don't want to spend the money, and they would rather people and firefighters die. It is what it is. They're okay with it, and they won't change it unless it affects them directly. And it's like Scrooge, dude. I swear to God, it's like Scrooge. They got to have the ghost of Christmas past and the ghost of Christmas present and ghost of Christmas future and Tiny Tim die, and then their heart will change. Or maybe like the Grinch, they need to see Cindy Lou Who cry, and then their heart will grow three times the size in that day. And that is the only way we're going to get people to care about what's going to happen. Because when those buildings do burn, they do affect the people that do own a single property. But single property ownership, as we found out in the rental registry, isn't that common. It's just not that common, Tom. So then we're not talking about a huge amount of people. For those landlords, there has to be a way for the city then to get involved to help them with that. Because I still think that we need to have all these buildings fixed at some point. Otherwise, we're saying that the loss of life is worth less than the cost of repiping these buildings. That's what we're saying. It's hard.
I mean, I guess, and this would probably be expensive to do and take a lot of surveying or whatever. But understanding who's going to be affected by these costs, would probably better inform the decision. I just want to say something about LLCs. Like, there's been this kind of weird thing about, because an LLC exists, something untoward is going on. No, I mean, it's. I think that's the impression some people are getting by some of the things that were said, not necessarily you. Look, if you can have a business in 3 different forms. You can have a DBA, which is you doing business as whatever the name of your business is. And that means if the business gets sued, you get sued. And so if somebody slips and falls or whatever, and that's your house, whatever, right? That's your personal stuff. You should never do business like that ever. And then there's corporations and LLCs. Corporations have 2 different forms, right? An S corp, or C corp rather, is you really only need that if you have institutional investors. If it can't be, you can't have a business like a bank or an investment company is investing in a company, is putting money in a company. You have to be a C corp, and that's the only entity that pays the corporate tax.
Speaking of which, a Hollywood Film Group is a C corp, and we are totally willing to take institutional investors at any time.
And then an S corp is just like an LLC, really. It's the different paperwork, and there's some differences, but by and large, they're generally the same. In the sense of that it's the company is liable. So if the company is sued, unless you did like something illegal or really horrific, the liability is limited to the entity that is the LLC or corporation. And so if that runs out of money, there's nothing else to sue, and that's it. It's not your house, your car, your stuff, right? And so now what happens is, real estate firms will often either have sometimes there's a corporation at the top, and the corporation will own LLCs, which is perfectly legal. and that like if ABC Corp owns DFY whatever, and DFY whatever gets sued, it not necessarily in some circumstances they are, but typically the parent organization isn't liable, would only be that subsidiary of it. And that's how liability should sit in the business world. So, there's just especially in real estate, there's been a lot of like kerfuffle, if you will, about LLCs. It's you can start one for $500 in Massachusetts. And then, by the way, last topic. Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick. That LLC cost is one of the highest in the nation.
Yeah, it's one of the others, right? If you might notice that every tons of businesses, you'll see wherever they are, anywhere in the country, and you'll see a Delaware corporation. That's because the paperwork and the filing fees and the annual renewal fees are very cheap in Delaware. That's why corporations do
$29 or something. It's like cheap.
Yeah, and then the other laws are very accommodating. And then before we get to the Coldplay story, I just wanted to mention on Monday, I put out the 4th piece of a series on the Worcester Police Department and the DOJ report, kind of how we got there. And there's going to be one more, and then I'm done, because I've written a lot about this subject. And the last piece, and it's just really digging in now. Going to take a little research, but going to look at where Minneapolis was with their police department, and it's how the people of the city regarded it, and controversy or whatever, before George Floyd. It's a much bigger city. The police department was notorious. It is on the mend, but it was notoriously horrific for a very long time. Much worse than Worcester. Way more bigger city, more cops, but way more shootings and a whole bunch of controversy. But nonetheless, it was a city where its population was very unhappy with the police department for a very long time. And then George Floyd is murdered. They had other Philando Castile was also, I think that was St. Paul, but that's right next door. But it had this catalyst moment, which was the murder of George Floyd. And it was so outrageous. And even people that weren't politically tied in, but knew about the problems of the police department, right? They don't necessarily pay attention to the politics, but this had affected them or somebody they knew or whatever. So tied into this one topic, when it's not activists that burn stuff, typically. Chaos happens in these events, these mass protest events, when it's people that are getting off the couch because they're so infuriated at something that happened that they're enraged. Because otherwise, they don't want to be involved in this politics stuff, right? It's not their thing. They do other stuff. But when you get people off the sidelines because they're so infuriated, that, of course, now you're talking about a much bigger crowd, and and much more volatility, because these aren't people that are going to protest weekly and whatever, right? They're not activist types. And the crux of it is, there's some background I want to do in it that I need to research, but the crux of it is, if we have an officer-involved shooting, or a situation where someone dies in police custody, and it was a violent situation that just looks bad, people interpret it as bad. Doesn't matter if it's bad or not. If it is bad, the same thing applies. But it could be somebody down the street and around the corner who catches an officer-involved shooting on camera, and it looks bad. I am not optimistic about what would happen in the city. I think it would be very, very bad, and that's I would say that is informed speculation.
And hey, Tom, so when is that part of the series going to come out?
I don't know. I got a chunk of it done. So there is some, I want to be very clear about the situation in Minneapolis, which I don't know a ton about. I know it was a controversial police department for a very long time, but I want to get to some statistics and stuff that might take a little time. So I'm not sure yet. I do kind of want to be done with this series. It's last one was like 4,000 words. Bless your soul if you read the whole thing. I hope you do though. That piece is about the 3 big cases that we always talk about, right? Nat Cosenza, the beer garden, Pastor Rizzuti. And, it looks at contradictions in testimony between Cosenza's criminal case in 2000, I believe it was, and testimony from the same individuals involved in the investigation in 2021 in the civil case. So it's highlighting what are clearly lies told in court by Worcester police officers, by a Worcester police officer. And then the beer garden and the Pastor Rizzuti situations looks at the BOPS report and how it contradicts with what we see on video, right. Which some of it is just like, yeah, that's not what happened.
Right.
And it's the headline is something like, if you don't believe these lies, you hate the police in Worcester.
Yeah, that's I mean, I obviously I'm a little biased, but I read your articles, and I think that's the part that I continue to take away from this argument is that I think before, it's funny, but before the DOJ report came out, I think that there was a sense in the city from like community members and the police department that we were pro-police, right? And that we were like supporters and all this other stuff. And part of it's probably racial, because people assume that the white guys are going to support the police, and that's going to be the way it is. And now that we've presented critique of not just and again, it's not just the police department. I mean, it's been the city manager, it's been the mayor, it's been the city council, it's been other departments throughout the city. It's the way that snowplows are handled. It's the fact that our garbage company very much might be run by the mob. And so there's all kinds of fun stuff that are going on out there. And by the way, that's not an opinion of This Week in Worcester, but if you would like to check that story out, look up Casella, Maine reporter and murder, and you can find your own information for yourself. But anyways, the story that we happen to have is a series of things where it looks bad, and so when we say that to the people, there was a change. There was a definitive line of change that happened on how we were viewed by people who are connected to the police department, but that are very prominent. Not necessarily the rank and file, because the rank and file have been very much providing us with information all along. And then in the more recent period of time, we've had some high level brass providing us with some information as well. And so as we've been going through this investigation, the point of it is that we love Worcester. I love Worcester. Tom loves Worcester. Worcester is not synonymous with the administration of it, the government of it, and the people who happen to be the high-level ranking officers. That's not Worcester. That's a group of people who've been hired to do a job, right? They're supposed to do a job. And we have some evidence that job hasn't always been done well. And we believe as journalists that that's an open conversation to have. And because of that, we've been branded anti-police, all this other stuff, right? And so when I read your article again, it made me really see that whole kind of thing. So you should check out Tom's series and read it and see what it is. In the end, I've taken to saying this, and I actually said it last night in another context. I said I'm pro good cops. I think good cops are great, but bad cops.
I think good cops are great. I think bad cops should not be cops.
Yeah, they shouldn't be. And so, and that's realistically the argument. And so. To connect it real quickly, to connect it to what's going on at the national level before we get into the most important story of all time, which apparently is this dude cheating on his wife at a Coldplay concert. That's ridiculous. But if you look into some of the incidents with ICE, right, because I've been following all the statistics now, the numbers of arrests have ramped up at a level literally we've never seen in our nation's history, ever. It's never been this way at all. And what we see on the news, though, is usually the really bad situations where it leads to protesters and the ICE people interacting badly. But you know what I noticed, Tom? In the situations where there's wild amounts of arrests and we don't hear about it, you know what's not happening at those things? It's because the officers aren't escalating the situation in those cases, and so you don't hear about it. The ones you hear about are where there are people who probably shouldn't be officers escalating the situation. I point out to the one in Cincinnati. So you look at the one in Cincinnati on the bridge, and that guy was dropping rocks on top of them below. That's true. I saw the video. He was dropping rocks on top of him. But he didn't punch the guy dropping the rocks. He punched the 56-year-old woman who was standing next to him. And he proceeded to punch her in the face 20 times until she was onto the ground. And then they proceeded to get her right. And if you watch the whole video, the guy who threw the rock that hit the guy in the face, the one who threw the rock over the bridge, go check out Cincinnati Ice and the rock throwing thing. He got away. And they haven't been able to arrest him yet because they don't know who he is. Because they were beating up a lady who was standing next to him and she was calling him, very similar to the Pastor Rizzuti case. She was using the word tyrant. So that situation was increased and incensed. Yes, there was a guy throwing rocks, but then there was
and he deserves to get arrested. That's insane.
Yeah, put that guy in jail. But then there was a maniac officer who's not permitted to arrest people, an ICE officer, who ran up and started beating a lady. That's why the situation became viral. That's why the situation went nuts, because you had a maniac. And so that maniac should never have a badge, never have a uniform, never be allowed to tase anybody or spray anybody. That person needs to have, and they need to go to therapy. They really do. They need to sit down with Maria. They can talk to Maria, and they need to go through some scenarios where they work through de-escalation techniques. What's that movie Anger Management with Adam Sandler and Jack Nicholson? They need to breathe. Goose Fraba, right? Goose Fraba, right? Do all that stuff because boy, that's the kind of thing that we shouldn't have happen. So you have to ask yourself: do you want a police department, or not just police, but municipal government in general, that has that attitude, or do you want one that doesn't have that attitude? And that's really a choice. That it's a policy decision, Tom. And so the people vote for that. If you vote for one group, they're going to have that attitude, which we kind of have a little bit in the city of Worcester right now. There's a tone and an approach to people who disagree, which is like, go fuck yourself. And I swore, I didn't want to swear. Get out of Worcester. You don't love Worcester because you're criticizing these officials. And that's the kind of thing we want to avoid. We want to avoid that kind of thing. So it doesn't matter really what political spectrum you come on. If you're in that role of leadership, you should strongly consider not being a part of it if you have a temper problem.
Yeah, and just to connect even that mentality back to the ballpark. We were told if you're not for Polo Park, you're not for Worcester. I am for Worcester, and I didn't want to give away $1.1 million of taxpayer money. So I don't think that's being against Worcester, and counting. 1.1 million and counting. So look out for if you haven't seen the last piece. It was on Monday. It's in the column section. You can find it there. No timeline on the next piece, but I think it'll be interesting. And then by request from Sam, I don't know why this story is so viral.
I can tell you
why. I don't feel bad for the guy. Screw that guy. If you're gonna cheat, leave. It's not hard. He's in public. You have no expectation of privacy in public. He did what he did. It was on the screen. It is what it is. Now, I want to preface my next statement by saying the best thing I've ever seen on Facebook was it was a link that said remove these people from your friends list immediately, and you click on it, and it was anyone that was a fan of Coldplay, and it was the greatest thing I've ever seen, and very true. It is solid advice, the best instruction I've ever gotten from Facebook. How very true that is.
You're anti-Coldplay?
That said, their response but I'm the most encouraged. I'm the most awful person to talk to about music, so don't take what I say about music seriously. But I will say their response that they are going to add sections that are no camera sections, like you won't be on the screen if you sit in this section, I think is pretty cool. It's a cool response to the situation.
Yeah. So the reason why it went viral isn't just because he ducked, right? That was one part, but the part that made it go viral for everybody was the letter that he released afterwards, which might be the most ridiculous response in the history of all media. He says in the letter that he's sad that you can't go to a concert at freaking Gillette Stadium, a 65,000 seat stadium, and and he had an expectation of privacy, dude. So that's what made everybody start looking him up.
That's right.
And all this other stuff. And then, of course, he's one of these like startup CEOs. This one of these AI companies, right? So there's all these. Everybody loves AI. They're all obsessed with AI, and all these startups that have tons of money in them that don't make any money though, right? He's part of one of those things, and there's definitely a sense of there's a sense from people that I get that when you're rich, we don't want to hear about your bullshit, right? We don't want to hear about your I swore again, dang it. We don't want to hear about your drama or whatever, like kind of keep it to yourself, that kind of deal. And the thing is that this guy isn't just sleeping with like some lady he met, he's sleeping with his HR director who's also married. So it's like not just cheating, but cheating at another level. And then if you go look up this guy a little bit, he's a family values guy, Tom. It's guaranteed. Whenever you see someone who posts things about their family and how loyal they are, how much they just I'm about one person, and that kind of stuff, it all to a fault. When that person does that, guaranteed they're cheating, lying, doing all this stuff.
I don't know if it's guaranteed, but if you're gonna say that stuff, don't cheat.
Yeah, but man, you it's very rare that you meet a person who follows through on that. There's very few people like on my my profile. It says that I'm filthy rags because that's how I view myself that way. And it's, by the way, for the therapists who watch our channel, I would say that the viewing myself that way, I find to be the healthiest version of myself, because that means that I'm always trying to live up to or try to get better, right? I'm always trying to get better. And I think that that's the way you should be. And in this case, this guy kind of took the attitude, and then he quoted one of the worst Coldplay songs. So not only is Coldplay kind of a gross band, the lights will take you home or whatever. He quoted it in his letter at the bottom of the letter. So I think that's part of what drove the viral moment, just the nonsense of this man's response to getting caught doing something he shouldn't have been doing with the person he probably shouldn't have been doing it with in a very public place that does not deserve privacy. And so, he kind of got what he deserves. The thing that sucks about this for me is that the two women involved, John is a jerk. The two women that are involved with this also get hammered, and there's like this woman, the HR director, yeah, was she cheating on her husband? I agree, but also at the same time, he was in a position of power. So there's like authority structures and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean,
weird stuff there, and so it stinks that she ended up having to lose her job too. And then, of course, the wife. Everybody in the world goes on the wife's Facebook page and starts throwing comments at her in like probably the hardest time in her life, right? And so that's really what my takeaway is, like, man, our world really stinks. That this is the story. By the way, in the middle of maybe the worst stretch of modern American life, at least in the modern time period, we're gonna all get distracted by this dude cheating on his wife. So
so that's the other thing. Like it's obviously he was not acting right, and people should act right. But that it's like this public. I don't. The crime, the punishment doesn't fit the crime. It's something to be dealt with between him and his wife, and like that it's turned into this viral thing. Granted, it's his fault. And I didn't look into it all, like the company or how big it is or what, but it just like strikes me that as odd that he would think that he's this important that anybody needed his public statement.
Yeah.
Like maybe it was for investors. It could have been for investors, right, or whatever. But it's just like, dude, you're a startup or something. You're a CEO of some startup. Yeah, Clinton had to say something. You don't. So, you know, again, I don't think the punishment fits the crime because it's so public and he's, you know, then getting beat on. And as you said, the runoff of that is, you know, his wife's got to deal with this very public thing.
Yeah.
And she didn't do anything wrong. But I do think the band's response was kind of cool. Like, we'll have some sections where you won't be on camera because that's not, you know, we're not here to focus on stuff that people don't want to focus on. I think it's kind of cool.
How about not cheat though? Like if like,
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, just don't cheat. It is what it is.
But I mean, you know, regardless of like how you feel about what he was doing, the idea, like, we don't want people coming to our shows and getting outed for stuff. I'm for that. I'm all right with that.
Yeah, I guess. At the same time, no expectation.
Well, like, we don't want people to not. We check that. We don't want people to not come see us because they fear something like this. I think that that's a decent response.
Yeah, I mean, that's again. It just smacks of that. So if people want to talk about privilege, man, does that smack of, not you, but from them?
Yeah.
If you go into a 65,000 seat stadium, there is no expectation of privacy unless you buy.
No, but I mean, listen, the odds are overwhelming that you'll be able to hide in plain sight in front with 65,000 people.
It's crazy, you know? Dude. It's crazy. So I don't know. Why am I a jerk? And why? Look at! I just looked at the chat. I'm a jerk, and there's a suspicious eyeball looking at me. What did I say that made me a jerk? Oh, is it? It's because I said something bad about Coldplay.
Oh no, that's perfectly fine. That's encouraged on this show. I don't care what they say. There's a very rare moment where I don't care what they say. Coldplay is garbage. But their response to this, I thought was decent. And like a generic, you know, I get your point. Like, in response to this specific thing, but the overall principle, we don't want people to not come because they're worried about some, you know, nonsense. No, I think that's decent.
Filthy rags, John. Keep up. Oh, that's what it is. Yes. I'm behind. I fell behind. Filthy rags. So hey, you know what? I will say this: just so to do a little bit of the humor, I do like the memes that kind of criticize the fact that it happened at a Coldplay concert, because that might be the uncoolest concert to get caught at. So, you know, it would have been way cooler at Ozzy Osbourne's last ride that he had a couple weeks ago. By the way, I mean, I saw the video online, but one of the coolest concerts of all time. It was awesome. It was whether you like hardcore or not, or you like metal or whatever, Ozzy rules. So this is what it is. And I mean, that would have been a much cooler concert to get caught at. Would have been Ozzy.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I understand.
You know, I mean, it was cool that they did a last show and all, but like, the band has barely been able to walk for 10 years. Like,
I will say this though, that concert officially is the highest grossing charity concert in the history of the world.
That's pretty
cool. That's pretty cool. The Prince of Darkness raised more money than Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie. So that's pretty cool, dude. and I like Lionel Richie. I'm not saying don't like Lionel.
You know, it wasn't even Lionel Richie. It was the whole Cat Williams whole scheme on Michael Jackson. That's the first thing I thought of. Anyway, it is now time for John's part of the show.
So hold on. That's my screaming goat. My screaming goat is mad at Tom. I hope you can all hear that, and it's coming out of your speakers, because this is the best time of the show by far, and we are still under 2 hours, Leanne. Last week we were at 1:59, so we're going to try to get this under like 1:57 maybe. Where I asked Tom about his favorite things. Last week we asked Tom what his favorite part of the fire department was, because of the burning down the house documentary that Hollywood Film Group leaned into production. That's Leanne's company. If anybody wants to know, Leanne she does editing and accounting. Reach out to Leanne at leanintoproduction.com if you want to hire her. And then Greatest Grand Productions is Tommy's production company. So we're doing that fire documentary as the three companies together. So it's pretty cool. All right, so this week I don't have something like cool to ask you related to a project that I'm doing, and I can't be self-serving, right? So I was going to do that, Maria. You stole my thunder. since we were talking about Coldplay and how much you hate it, but it's really an easy answer because Tom's been to like 4 concerts ever. And so the answer is, Tom, what was your favorite concert ever?
Kid, I don't know. Do you know me? Like,
No, I'm just messing with you.
Like, I mean, it depends on, is a concert anything you go to where there's live music?
Sarcasm, Tom. Have you heard
if club shows count, I have been to probably 100 times more shows than you. Just saying.
I'm just kidding with you.
Good God. Like I don't know. I estimate based on time and frequency that I've seen 1,000 shows. So piss off with your I don't do stuff now. I used to be cool. I don't do stuff now. So like big show, it was very cool at the time. I'm over it now, but I was at Guns N' Roses and Metallica at Foxborough Stadium, which was cool.
Axl Rose, Guns N' Roses, or someone else?
No, this was before they went away forever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This was the Metallica box set tour.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, this is 100 years ago. Maria, I don't like you. Thank you.
I see that picture all the time.
Yeah, she's got it. God help me. I mean, I've seen so many, like, small, like, indie bands, so many. The greatest band I ever saw perform live was a band that, if you don't know, there's something wrong with you, called Sunny Day Real Estate. Saw them at Old Lupo's Heartbreak Hotel, the wide one. It was like the second or third show on their tour from new album, so they were like studio tight, and it was ridiculous. And that's not even my cup of tea style-wise, although they're amazing. But hands down, the best band I ever saw perform live. I saw them another time. They were still great, but they weren't as good. This particular show, holy shit! Like studio tight, everything was on point, but it was still, it wasn't robotic. It was a live show. It was amazing.
So we've talked about my favorite bands before, but we've never talked about the favorite concert. And it has remained for many, many years a 4-way tie. It is always and will remain a 4-way tie. And when you hear the 4-way tie, you will continue to know how ridiculous John is. And so it's a 4-way tie between A Tribe Called Quest, and this is the pre-Busta Rhymes Tribe Called Quest. So that shows you how old I am. And I was working as a roadie as a very young boy at a place. I got to see Tribe in person, and it was amazing. Janet Jackson in the Black Cat era, Janet Jackson. Which, of course, if you think about that for a second, you'll really get that. Then I saw ZZ Top open for Lynyrd Skynyrd at the Centrum years ago in one of the greatest performances I've ever seen ever. ZZ Top in concert sounded literally exactly like the albums. It was unbelievable. And then Lynyrd Skynyrd proceeded to put on the worst performance I've ever seen in concert. And then they were drunk and high, and they just sang Freebird 3 times. It was crazy. But anyways, then the last is Tears for Fears. With Tears for Fears, I saw in the mid 2000s, and so way past their like prime, and they sounded literally like the music videos that were on MTV in the early 90s. It was crazy how exactly they sounded like that. So it's that 4. I have seen the Roots a couple times back in the day before they were on Jimmy Fallon, and I saw them once with Erykah Badu before she was Erykah Badu. So, but the Tribe was unbelievable. It still remains my favorite band of all time. But those are my 4 best concert experiences. All similar to you. They sound like the album, and when you go to a concert and you can sing along to all the songs that you like, that's always the best kind of concert experience that I've ever had. So, I've yet to see Coldplay, and I definitely didn't see Coldplay at Gillette Stadium.
If I was in a car that was on the way to Coldplay, I would either crash it or yank the wheel and crash it. I did see Black Thought is awesome. Who said Black Thought isn't awesome?
Black Thought is great.
I did see. I just thought of another pretty awesome show I saw. Well, it was really Redman and Method Man, but that was less interesting to me than who was before them, which was Ghostface and Raekwon, because Ghostface Killah is the greatest rapper ever.
I forgot about
this. Yeah, I said it.
that's that argument that goes back. I don't know. That's an interesting thing. I think that's an arguable thing. You know, it's funny. I did notice on Rolling Stone's latest rap list. I think we talked about this last year, but Jay-Z's not in the top 10 anymore, and thank God, because he shouldn't be in the top 10, because he shouldn't be in the top 100, because he steals everything and he's hot trash.
Oh, that's ridiculous. I mean, it's not. I couldn't tell you the last time I even heard Jay-Z's on.
Yeah, he also hung out with Diddy at all the parties, and Diddy, even though Diddy got didn't get convicted of everything, we know what went on at all those parties. Thank you very much.
And Black Dot has a freestyle on. I think it was on Sway in the morning. It was on one of those shows that are on satellite. Yeah. And it's like 9 minutes. And he just fires the whole time, and it's insane.
Black Thought is great. It is great. Top 10 all time. Not my number one, but definitely a top 10 all time guy for sure. For sure.
If you if you are interested in back when hip hop like had lyricism and stuff, there's I think I even mentioned them here before. They're incredible. As a 4-person group, you can find on YouTube. Watch the videos of them when they sit at the table. When they're sitting at the table, they're called Coast Contra.
Oh yeah, Coast Contra. They're really good, dude. They're really good,
dude.
They're really good. No,
they're really stupid.
Yeah.
Like lyrical gymnastics.
Yeah, there's another guy too that I really like. I've been listening to him more and more, which is Toby Nigwe. Yeah, he's great.
Nigwe, yeah.
He is great. He's got a song called A Million. That is unbelievable. I love that song. Love that song.
I mean, if you're into like, and it's not, some gun bars here and there, but it's not like gangster rap. It's like hip hop. Coast Contra is it.
Coast Contra is really good. Really, I love So I mean that style is what I grew up with. I mean, not just. So I mean, it wasn't just Tribe, but Tribe's my favorite. But EPMD. All those bands in that era were like round bands. It was multiple rappers going back and forth. Run DMC had started to kind of like commercialize a little bit, so it wasn't. You were getting kind of the duo thing, and then like the single MC songs. But that the band rap that's the hip hop that I grew up on, and I find that to be my favorite. You know what I mean? MAGA rap. I don't want to listen to MAGA.
Yeah, it's one dude, and he's a douche.
I don't want to listen to that at all. I refuse. I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear.
What's that dude's name? Who's the guy I'm thinking of? The dude with the long like braids, dreads. He's the dumbest looking human alive.
I don't know.
He's like he goes anti-woke rap.
Anti-woke rap.
Yeah. What's the dude's name? Come on, somebody help me out. He's a white dude.
I don't know. I've not. Apparently that hasn't hit my my YouTube music playlist, so that I'm happy that it hasn't.
There is
we went over, Tom. Leanne's gonna yell at us. Damn it!
Leanne's upset. I'm upset. All right,
we gotta go.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the comments. I hope we didn't miss anything. I don't think there was any questions we missed. Thank you for participating. We do this every Sunday at 8:30. We are now on Twitch. If you prefer to watch it on Twitch, I made a Twitch channel. I will spruce it up because I made it today in about 12 seconds, so I could get it on there today. But I will spruce the channel up.
Let's go.
Anything else?
No, nothing for now. See you guys next week.
We will try to screw it up less next week.
We're gonna